Ding. Whoops. I could do the peace bowl. Can I do? I love this sound. Too loud. Sorry. It's funny. I know all about different responses to that bowl because my mom can't sit in a room that has these bowls going. And for me, it is one of the more beautiful sounds I ever hear. And so I can hold all of that. Thank you for being here, everybody. It is great to see you and wonderful to be among you. It was a gift of a service for me. Thank you, Reverend Patty and the choir and Mary Lou and Lee and everybody else who was part of that. So here we are, gathered together. Next slide, please. Beautiful. So I have a reading for you this morning, and I may actually light that chalice if that's okay, because this is holy work that we are doing. This is a poem by the Reverend Lynn Unger, who's one of our Unitarian Universalist ministers, and she is a wonderful poet. The cottonwoods are flinging themselves outward, filling the air with spiraling flurries, covering lawns in deepening drifts. You could not call this generosity. Like any being, they let loose what they have in order to survive, in order that their lives might continue in a new year's growth. The more seeds they send out on their lofted journeys, the greater the chance for their kind to flourish. There is no hesitation. No one asks how much they will give. Without words, they know so clearly that everything depends on what we call giving, that which the world knows as creation. Do you recognize that beautiful tree that's right out in your parking lot? Next slide, please. So I am Rachel Maxwell, your friendly stewardship consultant, and I have been among you this weekend and enjoying and learning and being here together. I am part of a team of stewardship consultants that serve Unitarian Universalist congregations called Stewardship for Us. We do not work for the UUA, but we work with the UUA. So we are independent, but we also receive some funding and full endorsement from the Unitarian Universalist Association. I come at this work, I've been doing it for about 5 years and worked with over 30 congregations so far. And I come at this work from an entrepreneurial place. I held an MBA in sustainable business, and I was the co-founder of an online crowdsourced zero interest lending platform where small businesses, local businesses, the ones you can think of that you love, could access or crowdsource $10,000 to $50,000 loans in small chunks from people like you. So it was a form of generous finance, and it was really sharing money. And I learned a lot about people's generosity and what it means to have a different relationship with our money during that work. And I had come at it because I wanted to help people align their money with their values. And that is something that is deeply important to me. I believe that money is a form of energy that we hold. And if we direct it toward the things we value the most, that will change the spirit of everything. I'm a longtime lay leader and member of the Edmonds Unitarian Universalist congregation in Edmonds, Washington. As I said when I introduced myself, the land of the Coast Salish peoples and situated on the beautiful Salish seas. Those peoples are still living among us and are very active participants, and we can learn and hopefully humbly from them all the time. What else do I need to tell you? Not a lot. I live with my mom and my spouse. I raised 2 Unitarian Universalist children in my congregation. I am an activist, having been a very active participant in the Poor People's Campaign and some immigration rights works. And I guess that's enough. Okay, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? I am here because you all have, as Reverend Patty said, been working on this idea of getting out of the basement. So this room feels like a basement. And I was like, how could there be, in some meeting I had, like, why would there be a gathering place that is above ground that would have like almost no windows, and the windows that are there are like blocked because you can't see the beautiful world that Reverend Patty was teaching us about, showing us and helping us understand our own reverence for that beauty. It's not visible here. Not at all, like not at all. How come? I asked. Right, so what I just was called out was this was an Oddfellows Hall, and they are a sort of secret organization. So they were very intentionally hiding. That is not a thing Unitarians should do. Unitarian Universalists hide our light under a bushel, no, right? Plus, we revere the world. You live in such a beautiful place. If we had heard that beautiful sermon and our eyes could wander onto the trees or the birds, what might that have felt like? Okay, so, but I am a stewardship consultant. And so what do I look for in terms of your readiness to raise money to do the work that would change? Oh, slide, please. Right, here we go. Thank you. Do that again if I'm not very good about the slide, please, because I like move it on my own screen. Ready to do the work of a major capital campaign. So there's a lot of things that need to line up in order to have success when you are trying to do something that is truly transformative. You have to have healthy finances. So I look at your annual giving, I look at your resources and reserves, I look at your processes around all of those things to see whether you have healthy finances. You need to have a healthy congregation. And that is like, are you covenantal with each other? Are you in some kind of conflict? Is there a high anxiety level in the congregation? Those kinds of things. Then I look for a compelling shared vision for the use of funds. Do you all kind of, more or less, pretty much mostly agree on what it is you want to do? And do you all understand what it is that the money would be going for? And then on top of that, you kind of need to have a sense that now is the time. Okay? That's that sense of urgency. It's not like you have to, like, some congregations I work with have like literally water dripping on the chancel. That is a certain kind of sense of urgency. But there are other urgency things, like some people shared, we have been thinking about doing this for 20 years. So a sense of urgency can be like, okay, right? That too. Next slide, please. So what is this? This process that I have been going through with you is called a next steps weekend process. And it is a sort of formal, careful evaluation of those things. And what I do is get a lot of material up front. Thank you to those who put it all together and sent it to me, Russ and Dan, I think, and various others. And I get, like, from you all, interestingly enough, for the very first time, I received printouts of all of these things. Yeah, a little Stone Agey. Just saying. And it's heavy to carry in the suitcase. Anyway. And then I come in after I have reviewed all those things, and I meet with many of your staff members, your lay leaders, your sometimes just open membership meetings, and I met with your minister, your board, and then a wide variety of groups in the congregation yesterday, including, happily, the choir. So I appreciated getting to know people, and I pay attention to that. All like, who are you? What do you want to do and be? And what do you think about this proposal for this raising the roof thing? So, so now I'm presenting to you, and you will see what that is like. Okay, your mission. Like, so everything you do should be guided by this beautiful statement. Can you say it with me? We are a compassionate spiritual community that celebrates diversity, nourishes the personal and spiritual growth of all ages, shares our gifts, promotes justice for all, and serves the world we live in. So even building projects need to serve the mission. In fact, major projects of all types should most particularly be thinking about, how is it that you serve your mission? Have you all seen this little stone? Don't you love that? It's right outside the door out there. Next slide, please. So first thing I'm going to do and share with you is some of your numbers, because in fact, despite all that spiritual woo stuff I talk about, I am a total data geek. My husband and I ran a statistics for marketing, advanced statistical analysis business. So you have, and this data is what was reported to the UUA in January 2023. So some of these numbers are not exactly what everybody thinks right at this moment. You have 129 members and 96 pledging households. $219,423 was from pledge income from that year, which when you reported in January of 2023, you're probably talking about the January, the 21-22 year, your fiscal year that was 21-22 is probably what these numbers are. Your average pledge that year was $2,286, and your total operating expenditures were $226,599. And you reported an endowment fund of $291,000 plus. Next slide, please. So I also like to look at what sort of drill down into what that pledging looks like. So this is the pledging from the 22-23 year. the one we're just finishing up, okay? And during that year, you had a total of 95 pledges. And oh gosh, I don't have the total here, but it's something like 4 times $63,000-ish. Because this is a quartile analysis. So what is that? 240 something $1,000. Anyway, so a quartile analysis takes the total of all the pledges, the total dollar value of all the pledges, divides by 4, okay, and then has a number, which is this 63,000 that you see in the upper left-hand corner of the chart. And then you kind of try to match. What you do is you line up all the pledges by size. And if you look at the top ones, you look down until you get to 63,000. And there are 4 households that make up your first 63,000. And those are $10,000 plus pledges. Then the next 63,000 is made up of 11 households. So do you see you catching on about this chart? And those pledges are from 4,800 to 9,000. And then the third quartile has 19 households, and those pledges look like 2,400 to 4,500. And then the fourth quartile has 62 households with pledges from 0 or not 0 up to $2,400. And then I have the percent of households. This is, so I was talking to your stewardship team and I got some wonderful information from them, and they evaluate whether this percent of households is a healthy number, and they're always worried about it because the sort of Bible of fundraising by Wayne Clark says what would be healthy. What the Stewardship for Us team has discovered over time, that book was published quite a long time ago, is that that is just not true, what it says in that book. This is perfectly reasonably healthy. You're a little top heavy, but not a lot. So what we see most often is something on the order of like 6, 12, 22%, and then 60 something, right? So very similar. Pardon? Oh, I'm sorry. So you have really generous pledges for a congregation your size that are your top pledges. So the top givers, which is great. That is only good. Just saying. So the quartiles look a little different because you have 1 or 2 very big pledges. That's what I mean. Yeah. And and anyone can like sort of interrupt, although I have a lot of information to give you today. So another sort of guru about church governance is a man named Dan Hotchkiss, and he says the pledge in the 80th percentile is often a good reflection of the giving habits of families with typical resources in your area and high commitment to your congregation. And that looks like about $4,000. And your average pledge here is $2,454, and your median is $1,440, and those are good numbers. Next slide, please. So here's the history, according to the data from the UUA, of your number of members and your number of pledging households. Okay, and you'll see that your number of pledging households declined during the pandemic. You plus every single other congregation everywhere. I have seen numbers that look much scarier than this. And just next slide, and you will have access to this slide deck so that you can take a more careful look at all of this. Next slide, please. So this is a picture of your operating expenditures is the line in red, and then your pledging income is the line in green. And you'll notice that your pledging income actually during the pandemic exceeded your I mean, your operating, your income exceeded your expenses, which is like, I have never ever seen that. Partly because there are a lot of congregations that rely on a lot of other sources of income. So this is usually there's a constant kind of gap between the two numbers because there's fundraising income or rental income in addition to pledging income. You sure as heck do. You have a strong and amazing stewardship team. I'll go into that a little more later. Next slide, please. So this shows the progress over time of your mean pledge and median pledge. And I thank you because of your strong stewardship committee. I have this information because I don't get to see this from most congregations. And I gotta tell you, this looks like you're doing an awfully good job. This is not a congregation that should have a sense of scarcity. You are generous and you are giving. I do not say that to mean you couldn't give more. Next slide, please. So because I am the person I am, I always like to I mean, maybe it's because I grew up in this uber competitive capitalist culture. But so I'm throwing in some comparisons with the data from the UUA of all the congregations across the UUA. So I looked at the 118 congregations that have between 110 and 150 members. You're basically right in the middle. You're 62nd in number of members. But low, you are 38th in number of pledging households. What does that mean? That means you beat the average. You are above average. You are above average in pledging income also. You are a teeny bit above average in average pledge. And your size of operating expenditures and endowment are very average for congregations your size. So good on you. Next slide, please. So I found you had a heck of a lot of blessings in this congregation. I just was sort of blown away by the number of active volunteers, lay leaders that you have. Blown away. Because right now is a time when congregations are painfully feeling a lack of volunteering. This is the worst year for volunteers, for pledging households across the board. So most of the congregations I've been working with have been calling me in because they have been running a huge budget deficit and they don't know how to fix that. And their resources, their reserves are declining dramatically because they've been hitting up those reserves. And I think they should be hitting up those reserves. Let's be clear, because you know what? When people talk about reserves or endowments, I often ask, well, tell me about what they're for. So you're all laughing. For those of you who don't quite understand what I'm talking about, usually the answer is a rainy day. If anyone had told me that my congregation was going to have to literally shut its doors for 24 months, I would have said we will not survive that. So I think our congregation should be throwing what we have at the future, not holding it back. Okay, that's Rachel Yak. You love each other. I heard over and over again, I came in here, I found my peeps. I'm so glad this place exists. These people are wonderful. You have a strong, well-deserved reputation in this community. You are serving a need that is so deep. Being a liberal congregation, a liberal faith, in the middle of a big old red spot. People need you for sustenance, for spiritual sustenance. You make amazing music together. Oh my God, I was crying this morning. Literally, like, wow. Your choir is bigger than most congregations I visit that are twice your size. You have a gifted minister. Just like, whoa. You have a gifted staff. Mary Lou, I didn't meet the RE director, but I heard about her. There you are. Thank you. Wow. And, oh, and office administrator, sorry, don't mean to what, Tracy, I did meet. And there you are, right in front. Yes, sorry. I just like, wow, wow. Many congregations are searching for staff right now, and you have a beautiful staff. Your children's program is growing. Thank you. And you have enough space. Like, maybe it's not configured the way you want, and maybe it's one big fat basement, but you have enough space. You have a really strong annual stewardship program. Like, you do face-to-face canvases on an annual basis. I was told that you have a group of like 25 plus people who make visits. That, like, recognize your blessings. You are amazing people. You're doing the work. Celebrate it. That's, yeah. And your annual giving is really solid. Yay. You're well above average. So next slide, please. So, one of my favorite things is taking pictures when I come to congregations. No, I did not. No, everybody has garbage cans. Not everybody has these. So the truth of the matter is, I kind of had a hard time coming up with these challenges. Like, you can see that the blessings so outweigh the challenges, it's not even funny. So you have kind of like, here's a sort of lame challenge. You have an inappropriate sense of scarcity about money and volunteers. You want more? Is that what you said? Yeah, you do. Okay, it's okay, but you don't have scarcity. It's okay to want more, because that is part of what makes you as fabulous as you are. It is that you have a culture of volunteering. You have a culture of generous giving. Yay. All right, so your facilities need upgrades, and you haven't come to consensus about what you want to do. I am really sorry to hear that. I didn't expect that, frankly, when I came in, but that is what you said to me loud and clear. So most of my evening last night was trying to figure out, how do I help you fix that problem? And so I'll show you what I came up with. And I'm hoping that we will be able to work together going forward on honing what that might look like, so that you can get this place out of the basement. Many of you, I'm sorry to say, dismiss other experiences of your sanctuary and the importance of that experience. So I would say, I come into that basement and I think, because I am a really visual person, now you can see it with the like pictures that I take and the whole thing. And I would say, I probably wouldn't come back because I can't be in this space for hours every morning, every Sunday morning. And while I feel the beautiful spirit here, like you do have a beautiful, beautiful spirit here, it is being held back by this space in my experience. Now, not everyone experiences that. And they explained that to me, but they wouldn't believe that my experience was different. So I decided that as hard as it is to hear this, I worry that is actually extends out into other work you do, because what it is othering a real experience. So I am inviting you to live your values more fully and hear each other. I'm not going to take questions about that right now. Sorry, I will take all questions immediately after. And your other challenge, you live in challenging times. This is like a nightmare, right? This whole deal, the deal with the pandemic, which now is enough through or has gotten to be an endemic that you can gather, and that's great. And it was a collective trauma. So we are all living through the post-trauma. And our democracy is so threatened, and you feel it here more than I do on the land of the Coast Salish peoples. And that is hard. That's hard. And the climate is terrifying. So those are real things that all congregations are living with right now, but it makes things more challenging. It's harder. So I invite you to ponder on this idea, which I shared at the beginning, which is money is a form of energy that flows through our lives. A current or a currency. For some, it's only a little trickle. For others, it's a gush. I once heard a woman describe the money in her life as a fire hose. Yeah, she was a very wealthy individual, and it hurt in its own way. But whatever those circumstances are, we need to direct the money energy toward what matters in the world. And this is a concept that I have embraced that was first talked about by Lynn Twist, who wrote a book called The Soul of Money. I highly recommend it. Next slide, please. So I sent out that little survey. Remember the survey, everybody? Pretty much people in this room, 40 people filled it out, which is a great number for a congregation your size. I always look for more than 20%. That's what I want. So your top 5 choices for what were your greatest strengths are the people, yes. The ministers and staff, yes. The social justice work, yes. The music and your Sunday services. Next slide, please. The challenges that you feel you need to address that are your top challenges are membership recruiting. That was your very top. Facilities improvement, diversity, inclusivity, lay leadership and volunteer growth, and children and families programming. Next slide, please. So the priorities, so I always ask, what are your challenges? And then what are your priorities? And the question for me always is, do they change in those two? Because they're kind of similar. Anyway, your priorities pretty much match your challenges as expressed. You want to work on membership recruiting and retention. You're very worried about your membership. It's pretty flat, but it hasn't declined in ways that many congregations have seen. So I don't worry a lot about your membership, but I do think you need to create a plan, which you'll see. Facilities improvement, yes. Increase your volunteer base, go for it. You, like you have a phenomenal volunteer base, and yes, the more active everyone is, the better. Diversity and inclusivity matter to you, and you see that those should be a priority, and your social justice work. Next slide, please. Will you support a capital campaign? 24, only 36 people responded to this. 4 didn't. Well, they wrote comments which said things like, I don't know exactly what it is, or I'm not sure, depends, kind of things. But 24 said yes and 12 said no. And I look for 90% or more saying yes in order to have a healthy capital campaign. Next slide, please. So let's talk about when you get all the way to that yes, because I am fully confident you will get there. So if those things that I'm looking for are in place, healthy covenantal engaged people, healthy finances, a shared vision, and a sense of urgency, congregations pretty much across the board should be able to raise at least 3 to 5 times their annual giving. 3 to 5 times your annual giving is about $750,000 to $1.2 million. So that's the amount of money you should be able to raise if you're all on board about doing what you want to do. And it is mission aligned and you're in good shape and you're ready. Okay. Next slide, please. So when you raise funds, you need anchor gifts for those big capital campaigns. Those gifts look like 15 to 20% of the whole. If you do $1 million campaign, then that looks like 150,000 to 200,000 gift. You need at least one of those. And then all gifts, though, matter. Like capital campaigns are dependent on 2 things. One is major gifts like that, and other major gifts, because there's a large variety of major gifts you can make, but the other is full participation, because this is a spiritual practice. So everybody should make a gift that is meaningful to them, regardless of what your capacity is. So if you have not a heck of, you're one of those people where money flows through like a little trickle, that's okay. That's great. Please make a gift that would mean something to you, because then your spirit too is, your spirit energy is imbued in the project. So you do a face-to-face. Usually this is a big shock to people and they're all worried about how you recruit the volunteers. And this is like a no-brainer for you guys. You've got the people already lined up. They know how to do it. You're amazing. So this is all about making your mission manifest, though. That is where I think I saw the disconnect, because people aren't clear on how changing this is going to make your mission manifest in the world. Okay? Next slide, please. So I just threw in a sample gifts table for a $750,000 campaign, and it might have errors because I made it up last night. But I just wanted you to sort of be aware. I like congregations to be thinking about what it's going to take. Okay? Next slide. I don't know why I keep saying okay. I'm like looking out at you all, thinking about what you're thinking. Next slide, please. Oh, you're there already. Okay, so this is about like, how do people find money? Like, look at those things. There's $25,000 and you had like, I don't know, I can't remember now how many, but like 12 families giving $25,000 each. Like, whoa, everybody thinks not going to happen. There are all sorts of creative ways that people who do not happen to be sitting on assets that they are able to give away find major gift money. And here are some of them, but I am not going to share all of these with you right now. The most beautiful story I heard most recently, which is not on this list, is about a family that sat down. So the parents and the kids sat down together. They were in Columbia, Missouri, and they were doing a major accessibility upgrade, including a big elevator, which is just expensive beyond belief. And they were like, okay, how are we going to do this? We care about our community. And they had this discussion, and their kids volunteered to give up their Disney Plus channel membership for the 3-year repayment period. So you make a capital campaign pledge, and then you have 3 years to pay it off during that whole time so that they could contribute those funds to the capital campaign. That's my favorite story of these things. But there are a lot of others. So next slide, please. So are you ready? I'm really sorry to say you are not ready. And the reason for that is you have healthy finances, you have a healthy congregation, but you do not have a shared vision. Now, I think you can get there, because what I heard about from people is it's really about not having the shared vision. You do want to make changes pretty much uniformly, but you don't have a shared vision for what those are. And you're a little unclear on what the process has been to get to this place where you are today. And that is part of the problem, is that not everyone understands what has happened to date, and not everyone feels that what happened necessarily connected with the plan. So part of that is just the timing and the weirdness. Like, you had a whole thing happening before the pandemic and the ministerial change and everything. And then that necessarily had to put aside, like, when you're going through ministerial transition, you should not be working on a major building project. So all of that, and then during the, it's just confusing to everybody. That is really what I heard. And they didn't all, everybody doesn't feel like they had clarity on their input either being gathered, or not both of these things, but some of them said being gathered, and others said that it didn't seem to connect the design with what you wanted. So next slide, please. So what do? This was my big puzzle. I believe that you need to put together a formal task force that is charged by your board to develop a vision. So a mission-related vision for the next 5 years for your congregation. And plan, and make a plan. And that will include facilities, but it also will include many other things. So I would recommend that you have stakeholders from across your congregation as part of this task force. So maybe your families could be represented even. Certainly your choir should be represented. Certainly your social justice people should be represented. So stakeholders, the people who are going to be part of this. The worship people should definitely be represented. So then that task force needs to aggregate the work that has been done, that work that was done right before. I only incidentally saw some of this right before the pandemic or the ministerial transition. So there was a report that was made in 2018. That's 5 years ago. You think, well, you need to aggregate all of that and the work, like what were the cottage meetings? Not everybody even knew about it somehow during the pandemic. I saw a report from those that was dated 2021, and what the plans that were created are. And then the congregation just needs to be educated about what has happened to date, okay? In a way that people can grok. So that's always a little complicated. And then you want to conduct a congregation-wide vision casting. And that is absolutely needed. So what are your priorities? What is your vision of what you will be 5 years from now? And what are your priorities for that period of time? Next slide, please. So this should be accompanied by a 5-year strategic financial plan that will help you realize the vision that you have. So the vision helps you set the priorities that you need, and then you set some goals, and then you have to have things you do to make the things happen. Because you can't just say, okay, we want to grow by 50 members in the next 5 years. You have to actually do things that are different from what you are doing now. And chances are that means deploying resources in the direction of doing those different things. And I would recommend that now is a time to deploy reserves resources rather than waiting for those resources to show up in your pledging. So consider increasing the marketing of your congregation. That's one of the ways, and I've been telling people coming through this period where our doors were closed and many people stopped coming, that we actually need to put into place marketing plans that we didn't have before. Like, this is a time when we need this more than ever before. Work on your member engagement strategy for newcomers coming through your doors. And I heard that that's already bubbling up. So that's great. And then you need a building project team. And again, this is going to be a team that is put together by the board. So it needs an intention. Your team has been wonderful. I'm like looking at Dan because he's been a big part of it and he's talked to me, and it's done a lot of work, but they shared with me it was never sort of formally put together, and the meetings have always been open to anyone, and the group has changed over time. And I think that maybe part of what people are feeling about this has to do with that lack of formality. So I mean, again, I want to know how this resonates to some degree with you all, but that was what I thought might help you. So this building project team is different from the visioning team. So once you have a vision, then you have to create a building project. I know, I see people going, oh God. Next slide, please. So here's the timeline, and you can go, oh God, because this is a 2-year timeline to get to a capital campaign. And that is because there's work that you need to do, and that's just, but I promise 2 years and you're done. I know, but it's church time, right? Like, everything takes longer. But I do recommend that you put this to bed if you decide at the end of that 2-year process that you want to live in the basement. Okay? Because part of the misery you all are feeling is that the folks who have been around a long time are like, are we doing this again? But yes is the answer to that question. So I have a whole outline here about, and I tried to get it right about the order of operations, but the truth of the matter is I was writing this at 10:30 last night, and so it may be imperfect. But I hope I get to work with you, even if it's minimally, on creating this timeline going forward. So you can go to the next slide. It just keeps going for 2 years. So in the spring of 2025, you would have a dual campaign, which would be annual plus capital, with a plan you all can get behind. or at least 90+% of you. And a sense from the people who don't want it, who are the like 2 to 10%, that they were heard, that they had an opportunity, and that this is what the congregation is calling for. And it's okay to not all be like in lockstep, right? But once the congregation has said yay, then you want to go with it. Next slide, please. So these are my closing words, and then I will take a Q&A. These are the words of Margaret Wheatley from her book, Turning to One Another. There is no greater power than a community discovering what it cares about. Ask what is possible, not what's wrong. Keep asking. Notice what you care about. Assume that many others share your dreams. Be brave enough to start a conversation that matters. Talk to people you know. Talk to people you don't know. Talk to people you never talk to. Be intrigued by the differences you hear. Expect to be surprised. Treasure curiosity more than certainty. Invite in everybody who cares to work on what's possible. Acknowledge that everyone is an expert about something, and know that creative solutions come from new connections. Remember, you don't fear people whose story you know. I heard that so clearly today. Real listening always brings people closer together. Trust that meaningful conversations can change your world. Rely on human goodness, even with the coyote out there, and stay together. Thank you so much. Next slide. You can just, we'll close with that slide. Thank you so much for everything that you are and do, and for inviting me into your midst to be able to, I hope, help you get out of the basement. So I will happily take questions. Oh, yes. So the comment is that I said things about how it is that making this space more attractive might actually fit in to your mission. I assume you're sort of talking about your mission work. Like, how is it that, so nurturing, many social justice oriented people find it really difficult to think about spending money on space, right? Like across everywhere. You're not unique in that in any way. That is understandable. The money isn't, we're either going to take this big old pot of money and do this, or we're going to take this big old pot of money and do that. This is my first point, is that you raise money for something, right? And in fact, that is that, and then that pot of money goes for that thing. And that is part of the process of capital campaigns, is it's very important to have the something before you can find out how much money you can get. But really, what is most important to me is that like if your space reflected the spirit that is within, that power, the power of that would build the spirits of the people here, and you would do more in the world. Like you would reflect and be, now how you do so damn much, how could you possibly do more? I think you would have more people. I was actually told by 2 of your members about 2 different stories that were, if you build it, they will come. I don't know that, like I was asked about that. Is there assurance about that? Does it happen every single time? I don't have data on that. And I do care about data. So I think that was more or less what I talked about. I see a question in the back, and then I'll take one right here. Yeah. So testimony from the new folks. Thank you. Testify. No, I have one over here. I'm sorry, but let me just repeat it into the mic so folks who are listening later can hear a little bit. But the fella in the back is a newcomer to us, and he was suggesting that this would be an investment that would be made by the congregation, and that's important, and that we would look at the return on that investment. And his feeling about that is it would have a strong return from my perspective in terms of mission, as well as in terms of people walking through the door. Yeah. It should be viewed as an investment. Yes. Right. Thank you. Yes.
I also am a newcomer. I just signed the book last month.
Oh, how exciting. Yay.
I raised my hand during your presentation,
Yeah.
not because I had a question, but because I wanted to underscore your fundamental point. And I will do it now. And then I do have a question.
Okay.
I came here from Florida before, and I was a member of different congregations there, including a Presbyterian. But I'm a what do you call that? Something whatever, one of those recovering Presbyterian types, whatever. And we went through the same process of losing congregation and having to update our sanctuary to be able to attract people. But I have to tell you, when I came in here, I knew Art and Marianne. One of the things that attracted me to Prescott, other than the hiking, was a large Unitarian congregation. But when I came in here, I was so depressed. I think the thing that happens is that those of you who've been here for years, you don't see it. We don't see what's become normative. We only see what's new. And when you're a newbie, you come in and you say, this is depressing, incredibly depressing. Patty mentioned the rug. I was flabbergasted that we didn't get it cleaned after the rummage sale. It's nice to have these things on the wall that kind of remind us what our values are. But anyway, I wanted you to hear it from someone who's lived it. And I think it every time I come in here, but it gets less and less striking as that
Yes.
feeling of depression. Now, my question is, and this was not, your presentation was very helpful. The one thing that was missing, and I'm a social scientist, is demographics. And, facing the demographic question is huge in every congregation, pretty much, I imagine. But one of the things about having a change space is appealing. I'm a baby boomer. I'm a tail end baby boomer. You need more of me, and you need everybody else that follows me. How many of you are in that category? How many of you are born before 1960, after 1960? How many of you were born after 1960?
I thought I counted.
This is a problem. You see the world in a very different way. Everybody has to be able to adapt. And so my question was, did you look at our demographics compared to other congregations and what we're kind of dealing with in terms of this? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, no. So yes and no. To answer the question specifically, did I look at the demographics? So I did not look at like Prescott's demographics and carefully see how do you reflect the demographics of this area. I do have a lot of experience with demographics, and I look at what are generally church demographics. So your congregation maybe is a little older than the standard, but they're all old. So, but you are, I was told again and again, you're a retirement community, so you should expect to be older than standard. So I have personally not data-based, no worry about your demographics. Like, you're going to lose some of those big pledgers. That's how it works. We all need to be thinking about the life of our world of pledging. Like, when I first joined a church, I was like, well, maybe it's like a gym membership. So $50 a month, because that's what they were then. And then finally, when I got a clue, it was like, okay, I doubled my pledge. And then the next year I doubled my pledge again. Like, once it clicked in how important this was to me, I just started giving as much as I possibly could. And that, you know, once the kids were gone and I wasn't paying for education and all that nightmare, I could spend, you know, very large percentages of my income on my church. And I do. So that is so I'm not really worried about the specific congregation through not careful statistical analysis. So you could do a demographic study. That is always interesting. Yes.
I have heard over years about the proximity of operation and capital funding. And the word that I have heard is cannibalize. Does one cannibalize the other? What's your experience? I never saw it, but I kept hearing about it.
Yeah, good question. Lots of people worry about that. Part of the training is to say to people that your annual gift is the heartbeat of your congregation. You do not drop your annual gift for capital giving. That is totally in addition. I generally recommend to congregations that they don't try to boost their annual a lot during a capital year. But I have not seen annual gifts decline. Often the campaign makes people even more excited. Like, doing the work, people get more excited. And so while they can't necessarily lift their annual gift during the pay period of the capital gift, often right after that, annual goes up. So on the fourth year. Yeah. Peter, and then, oh, Dan, you have had your hand up for a million years. Let's start with Dan and then Peter.
I just wanted to also underscore what stood out to me, jumped out at me, was you gave us a list of 5 challenges and 5 priorities. And number 2 on both lists was facilities. And all the other 4 are directly related to and supported by number 2, facilities improvement.
Nice. Thank you.
There's a small elephant in this room, which is the endowment situation and the finance committee. And I'm probably stepping on some of my dear friends' toes right now. But we have an issue which I don't think has been addressed adequately by our congregation. And that is that we do send money to an endowment fund through the UUA, and it is not, to my understanding, available until it crosses the threshold of $300,000. I believe I just heard not long ago today that it's up in the $280,000 range. But you talk about money that's just sitting there, and that's our money, but we can't even get a hold of it to use it for something important like this. I'm sorry, dear friends, but we have a philosophical situation here that I don't think any of us has really addressed directly. I don't think any of the people that are on the finance committee are elected. So in a sense, they don't reflect the mood of the congregation. And again, I think we need to address this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I'm a big believer in naming the elephant in the room. Your endowment is you probably have ways that you can actually reach that money through a congregational process. So it's not a huge sum of money right now. Truth be told, for an endowment, a $280,000 endowment is not a giant. And I mean, I'm working with congregations that have a $4 million endowment and they won't touch it. So I didn't name that as a concern because it's not vast sums of money, but it is significant. And I think that you need to look at, I also heard about a gift that was given to the congregation that was a very sizable $100,000 gift, sort of a windfall that you have not put in the restrictive place of endowment yet. And that will probably require, and I didn't name that because that wasn't really yet where I think you should leave that be for a while, frankly, and not make a rush decision about what to do with those funds until you have your vision set. And that is, so I would recommend that you not muck around with funds until you have a vision. And then you can look at what are your resources to meet that vision. So, and you certainly should consider your endowment as a resource. It just is a more restricted resource than most. Yeah. Where if someone new, or we have one up here too. Yeah. We have someone with the mic in the back, so can we wait 1 sec?
Well, this is really
Okay.
not a question, but I wanted to thank you, Rachel. This has just been so helpful to me. And one of the things that I'm discovering is that so far I've been examining me and how I am responding and how important it is now for me to recognize that it's the community and how it's going to benefit or be more wonderful because of the way I'm thinking. So changing my role, just wanted to put that in, and thanks to you and
Yeah.
our committee who got you here.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks to like you have a ton of people who have worked on this question over quite a long time.
I just wanted to say that having had the opportunity recently, I'm not a part of the Finance Committee, but having sat on at a meeting at the Finance Committee, we have a wonderful group of very intelligent, thoughtful people on the Finance Committee, and I certainly encourage us all to feel that they are part of and a very important part of this whole thing, and not to feel like they're, putting unnecessary roadblocks up.
Yeah, I think that one of the things you actually do pretty well is love each other, and I highly recommend you continue to do so. That you may have diverse opinions about your money and use of funds and things like that, and that is okay. Like but you can't build something big until you're all behind it. So that, was the puzzle I was trying to figure out. I mean, because I think from what I heard from people who were not supportive of this Raise the Roof campaign, they do recognize that things need to be done. So that's important for everybody to understand. Like, you are, in a certain way, you're all on the same page, but you haven't got the project yet.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, because everybody agrees something needs to be done, but people don't know what the final cost is of raising the roof and what we're actually talking about. And some people feel that we can make this less basement. We've already got plans to change the windows, recarpet, change the acoustics and the sound, paint this, do something with the ceiling. In your opinion, would that be enough to make this feel less like a basement?
I don't think that what you have just talked about speaks to your mission. So what I invite you to do is not problem solve, but rather consider what is your mission in the world, and listen to the new people. I just think that is deeply important, because part of what the current plan is didn't include changing up the HVAC. Like, I think you should be fully reflecting your greenness. And I get it. There are all sorts of city regulatory nightmares out there lurking that are just really bad. The facilities team shared some of it with me, but you should be electrifying, like, because the future, and have your own source. The future is not in fossil fuels, friends. So you should be considering all of the different attributes of accessibility, not just making one bathroom wheelchair accessible. You know, this is living your values. This is living your mission, is making a place that feels to the stranger among you. So someone said to me yesterday, a house of, I can't, oh gosh. Anyway, was it you? A house for all the people. Not just a space you can all sit in, a house for all the people. What would that look like? I just loved that phrase. Thank you, Marianne. So that is what I recommend, that you don't just try to problem solve. We're all such problem solvers. Yeah. The building is part of it, not all of it is what is being shared. Any other questions? Peter again. Yep.
Briefly, in one of the meetings that I was in, we were referred to as an island of sanity.
Yes, an island of sanity. Yes, you are an island of sanity. And Margaret Wheatley wrote a book, Who Do We Want to Be? I believe it is. It's one of her more recent works. And she talks about islands of sanity. We need to create them. And you are one. So I thank you all. If there isn't more, I'll be here if you want to just yak with me. Others in the group have my contact info. It's on the slide deck, which I will share with the congregation. Thank you.